When it comes to heroes and their family, things are often a bit rocky. If they have any family left, that is. Luke Skywalker learned that he was related to Daddy Vader, Batman got forever scarred since that movie night that turned to the worst, and Peter Parker lost not only both of his parents, but the man that stood in as his father figure. Times are rough for our favorite heroes, but some have it worse than others. In today's video, I will discuss some of the known and lesser known heroes that had a really twisted parental figure and how it affected them. Let's start with the worst mom of the year as seen in The Suicide Squad. Saying that James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was totally insane is an understatement. But do you know who's more insane than anything else that happened in that movie? No, not Harley Quinn, but the boyfriend scene was pretty awesome. I'll give her that. I'm talking about Polka Dot Man's mother. On various occasions, the man who needs to puke colorful polka dots daily blames both his unstable mind and strange superpower to his own mother. You see, his mother was a special kind of scientist, one who was hoping to create the most powerful team of superheroes ever seen in the DCEU. But her dream came to a halt as the experiments she forced her children to undergo went terribly wrong in most cases. Polka Dot Man is a bit cryptic as to what actually happened to his other siblings or how many of them he actually had, but one thing we know is that not all of them survived. Even with her children passing away, the hunger for power and glory mom kept doing what she was doing and is downright responsible for the creation of the supervillain her son, Abner Krill, was destined to become. Yeah, that's pretty twisted. William Stryker Jr. was not only one of the most fearsome anti-mutant men out there, but quite the awful father. It's true that his mutant son, Jason Stryker, accidentally led his own mother to take her own life, but when your father sent you to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters not to accept and master your newfound powers, but to get cured from it sends a rather aggressive message. Jason's powers lie in mental manipulation, where he could create illusions and implement them inside anyone's mind. So, William, having experienced these dark illusions, eventually decided to lobotomize his own son in order to use his spinal fluid to create a compound that could control other mutants. This led him to force Jason to try to make Professor X eradicate every single mutant from the face of the Earth. Obviously, the plan failed when Storm and Nightcrawler saved the day and put an end to Stryker's complete madness. William Stryker not only created a sort of supervillain or superweapon, but took a very promising mutant away from what could have become a valuable asset to the X-Men team. As a huge fan of Batman myself, it pains me to put the Dark Knight in a bad light, but let's face it, the way he recruits his allies is a little bit sketchy. Before Dick Grayson ended up as part of the Bat family, the boy who would grow up to become Robin was part of a family of acrobats who called themselves the Flying Graysons. Things were pretty good for him until a big shot mafioso under the name Tony Zuko showed up at the circus and took Grayson's family down in order to gain money from the circus they were hired by. This led the rich Bruce Wayne to take the boy under his wing, or wings, and instead of giving him a stable life far away from danger, he plunged him right into the dark heart of Gotham City, training him to fight crime by night. Talk about bad parenting. And when Grayson got fed up with Batman and took the mantle of Nightwing, well, Batman just found new Robins, until he took the youngest one yet, his own son, Damian Wayne. Yes, Child Protective Services, I like to file a complaint. It's still a bit early to tell what really happened to Peter Parker's parents in the MCU. We've only slightly heard about them in Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home. But what we know, or at least what we think we know, is that they are not of this world anymore. And what about Uncle Ben? Anyways, if we look at earlier Spider-Man films, we know that his parents were dealing with some very dangerous people and most probably lied to Peter about their real occupation. That doesn't make them bad parents per se, but they clearly wouldn't win an award for it. When it comes to Uncle Ben, the poor man keeps getting mugged and, well, passes, leaving Peter without really much of a father figure at all. And to top it all off, the MCU has offered various father figures to Peter in the form of Tony Stark, who sacrificed himself, Adrian Toomes, who turned out to be the Vulture, and Quentin Beck, who tricked Peter as Mysterio. That boy clearly needs to take care of his daddy issues, and soon. Clark Kent's Kryptonian father Jor-El might have had good intentions when he secretly placed the Growth Codex, or what some have called the Registry of Citizens Codex, inside his own son, but the consequences might have been way more disastrous than he thought they would. The Codex is responsible for creating all life on planet Krypton, and when Zod wanted it for himself, Jor-El sent it away with the future Man of Steel to Earth. This eventually caused Zod, who was imprisoned in the Phantom Zone, to escape and seek revenge. As we've seen in the film Man of Steel, Zod and his Kryptonian buddies flew straight to planet Earth and caused havoc, leaving destruction and taking countless lives in their wake. Instead of putting the fate of the world on Superman's shoulders, his father could have just destroyed the Codex and hoped Clark would procreate the good old-fashioned way with Lois, if you know what I mean. Born Peter Jason Quill, the self-proclaimed Star-Lord has more than one issue when it comes to any kind of relationship. But growing up without a father and losing his mother to cancer are some of the most important events that changed his life forever. I mean, that and getting abducted by aliens to live as a space criminal across the galaxy. Growing up with Yondu of the Ravagers clan, Quill lived a sort of hate-love relationship with Yondu, who acted as a sort of distorted father figure for him. And while they were at each other's throats in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, they seem to have come to an understanding in Volume 2, as Quill finally met his father, Ego, a giant living planet who planned to extend himself by planting seeds across the galaxy. While father and son had a touching reunion, this didn't last long when Ego admitted being responsible for Quill's mother's illness, throwing him into an unstable rage as he destroyed the living planet with the help of the Guardians. Quill lost both his father figure and his real father in the same film, which tells me things might not get better for the slightly unstable and impulsive Star-Lord. Silas Stone, who we have seen in the Justice League film, was a scientist and the head of S.T.A.R Labs, the very same place where Polka Dot Man's horrible mother used to test on her subject. Is it me, or is there some fishy stuff going on in that lab? Which makes me wonder what else happened in there. Silas was another character that experimented on his own child. In this particular case, he was trying to save his son Victor, who was gravely injured in an accident with his mother. Since his mother didn't make it and Victor barely did, his father decided to turn him into a biomechatronic organism, later known as the superhero Cyborg, using a mother box found by his lab. While Cyborg made use of his powers for good later on, he felt alienated from everyone, calling himself the next alien invasion. Going full Dr. Frankenstein on his son, Silas Stone made a selfish call without thinking how his son would actually feel about coming back as a living machine. And most importantly, if he would give birth to the next supervillain. Maybe in another dimension, things would have worked out quite differently and Cyborg becomes the next big bad. I could see it happening. When Warren Worthington II found out that his son, Warren Worthington III, also known as the X-Men Angel and later on Archangel, was a mutant, he had a similar reaction that William Stryker had with his own son Jason. Since that day, Worthington II sought to find a cure against these various mutations and intended on using Angel as his first test subject, until Angel escaped his father to seek refuge at Professor X's mansion. The father, however, kept on his little crusade against mutants, and as the lead of Worthington Labs, finally developed the infamous mutant cure. I mean, are you really surprised that Warren Worthington II would throw a lot of money at something in order to try to fix it? His name is Warren Worthington II, after all. That's a name that either invests all their wealth into a mutant cure, or maybe tries to build a rocket that can spend 30 seconds in space for the fun of it. What made me think of that? I don't know, probably not current events, right? But anyways, in X-Men 3 The Last Stand, we don't know if the Warrens were able to get things sorted out. Whether or not he fixed his strained relationship with his son remains to be seen, but last we saw him in the original timeline, Angel saved his father when he was pushed off a roof by a trio of mutants consisting of Psylocke, Arclight, and Quill. I'm wondering, would you have forgiven him? To be completely transparent and honest, I'm not too sure I would have myself. While we haven't met Bruce Banner's father in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, it's possible we just might in the upcoming Disney Plus series She-Hulk. Or maybe even What If, as these stories promise to cross over to the so-called Sacred Timeline. Dr. Brian David Banner, who goes by the villainous sounding name Devil Hulk in supervillain mode, was an abusive father who ended up taking his own wife's life in front of his child as they tried to escape his wrath. In later events, Bruce eventually turned into the Hulk as he bursted into an uncontrollable rage, as he does, and got rid of his father once and for all. Or did he? What happens next is something the MCU has not yet tapped into, but might be quite interesting to develop as the multiverse is opening up. And WandaVision opened up more opportunities to showcase magic and all things occult in the franchise. So after Bruce defeated his father, a powerful entity known as One Below All took over Brian's soul and brought him back to life in order to one day rule over the whole multiverse. A whole Gamma-empowered war is sure to erupt with Devil Hulk and Red Hulk in one corner and the Hulk and She-Hulk in the other. Place your bets right now. It's no secret that a few Marvel films, such as all 3 Iron Man films and Captain America: The First Avenger, received funding from the United States Army. And while Tony Stark eventually moved away from selling arms, the relationship between Marvel and the US Army is as complicated as it was for the character of Steve Rogers. In some ways, the US Army acted as a sort of father figure, if you will, for the little guy from Brooklyn. But they also used him as an experiment that they weaponized and marketed across the world to show off American power. The US government seems to only support Captain America when things go their way. They were quick to brand him a traitor when he refused to sign the Sokovia Accords, and the way they treated black super soldiers like Isaiah Bradley was despicable. While Civil War showed us how quick they were to turn on their favorite project, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier showed us how rotten they can be with people who don't reflect the image of America they intend to show to the world. Is this one a bit of a stretch? Yeah, maybe, but I still think it counts. It's no secret that Norman Osborn was one busy man. Spending most of his days running Oscorp did not leave a lot of time for him to enjoy family time with his only son Harry. And when he wasn't busy acting as CEO of his own company, he was out there wreaking havoc dressed as the Green Goblin and being a pain to the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The absent father never really told his son about his supervillain secret, and Harry only found out after Spider-Man defeated him with his own glider. The realization that his father lost his life to his best friend Peter Parker led him to take the Green Goblin mantle out of revenge, but also out of a sense to live up to his father's high standards. The way Norman treated or completely ignored his son left him so thirsty for parental approval that in some ways he became the very reflection of his father and hopped on that glider in hopes of avenging him. Like father, like son, I guess. At least in the movies, Harry got a little bit of redemption. Being the grandson of one of your father's worst enemies while being the son of a vigilante who dresses as a bat makes for very awkward family dinners. Born from the unholy union between Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul, Damian Wayne was raised by his mother for the first decade of his life, until she dumped him at Wayne Manor for him to live with his father. The poor boy was trained by the League of Assassins, which made him not only a violent child, but also an expert at martial arts and stealth. Instead of trying to rehabilitate him into a regular life, Batman gave the boy the title of Robin, making him the 5th of his kind to fight against crime in Gotham City at the Dark Knight's side. But before becoming official, he decided to fight Tim Drake, who was the then Robin, and then escaped after being grounded to end the villain's spook in ways that are not suitable for young children. Originally created to become Raz's new vessel, Damian is layers of trauma on top of layers of trauma. Some viewers agreed with Thanos' plan to eradicate half the universe's population in order to save the rest, some not so much. But one thing we can all agree on is that he was a terrible father. Not only did he sacrifice his favorite daughter Gamora to get his hands on the Soul Stone in order to complete his collection of Infinity Stones, but he made Nebula's life a literal nightmare. While Gamora was always the preferred daughter because of her amazing battle skills, Nebula always fell short and had a hard time reaching her sister's level. This is when Thanos decided that he could improve her by having her be implanted with all sorts of technological weapons and gadgets. The new and improved Nebula kept getting faster and stronger, but never enough to Thanos' taste. He pushed her so far that she barely became organic and filled with a blind rage against her sister, and pretty much everyone that stood in her way. It took her a while to get over all the wrongs caused by her adoptive father, but she eventually was able to get over it and became one of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and by extension, an Avenger. When Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, defected from Dreykov's evil organization, she ended up working as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. One of her very first missions was to get rid of Dreykov at all costs, and that included setting off a bomb in where Dreykov was and using his young daughter as a trap. As we have seen in the recent film Black Widow, this greatly affected Natasha, leaving her full of regrets. But what we also learned is that Dreykov's daughter actually survived the explosion and was turned into Taskmaster. Forced to do her father's evil bidding, she lived most of her lives trapped inside her own mind, unable to escape. I'm not sure if Dreykov actually saved her because he loved her or because he saw her as another prized woman no one but him could have. But one thing is for sure, I really hope Yelena got him good in that explosion, and if not, that Taskmaster will come back to finish the job in future MCU films. Another superhero that has debatable motivations is Charles Xavier, affectionately named Professor X by his pupils. Granted, opening a school as a refuge for young mutants is an amazing and noble thing to do, but training them as soldiers and sending them on dangerous missions where they could potentially lose their lives in the process is shady at best. Couldn't he just find a way to teach them how to use their powers in a non-violent way instead? I can see Storm start a 100% eco-friendly power company, or Iceman find a way to use his powers to cool off whole buildings from the summer heat. But when it comes to using his students' powers in diversified ways, Professor X had only great battles in mind. And most importantly, the defeat of his ex-friend and now rival, Magneto. While the superhero genre is filled with awful father figures, now and then we can see some amazing dads like Vision, who we hope to see again in one way or another in the near future. What if he lives just this one time? Please, MCU, please?